Okay, as a continuation of the last video, we've created a composition already that is set up for the 1920 by 1080. And if needed, it's just right there, new comp, 1920 by 1080. And for this project, I'm only going to go about 5 seconds. We're going to be making something from scratch, and I don't need it to go on for very long. So this composition name, I'm actually going to call this a fire, because we're going to try and make some fire from scratch. All right, so as we're making it, remember, as long as you are making an attempt at this and you've made some effort at making it look like fire, that's what we're going for. So we're going to be doing a lot of the effects over here to try to give it that fire feel. So remember, if you need to pause me at any point, rewind me, do that, because I'm going to move quickly through here. And so first thing we got to do is, you notice nothing is in the timeline, so I need to right click down here and say a new solid. And so I have something, and I can call that fire as well. Alright, so I now have something down here that I can start to drag my effects onto. And so I like to go to effects over here. They are also at top. I just like to have it over here just because it's a little more convenient for me. And remember, if you don't have these, check your workspaces. You might be in one that doesn't have the effects panel open, or you can switch over to the effects panel now. Alright, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to add in an effects under simulation called CC Systems. So when you look for things, you can always look by name. So if I just type system in there, CC Particle Systems right here, you're going to drag it onto here and let go. Now notice it's turned black, and it's, what has happened. If I hit play, or for you all the space bar, you'll start to see what happens. And we now have this animation that looks like, I guess, kind of like a sparkler or fireworks going off, okay? That is the default for system particle, or particle systems. Okay, now, I'm going to go ahead and stop that because I don't want it to play. You'll see that I just clicked and dragged here. Now, I want you to notice something. Down here, or up here, these effects, if I make changes up here, affect the entire timeline. Down here, I also have the effect in my drop down, but this allows me to make changes to the effect by putting in keyframes, so that if I only wanted it to look a certain way for a little bit, I could, and then I would be able to add another keyframe to turn it off and turn it on. So for right now, we're going to be working up here, all right, and we're going to need to change some of these things. So when I start changing some of these things, remember, you're just trying to make it look good. So if yours looks a little different than mine, that's okay. I want you to have this project to play with it. The goal is to make it look like fire as close as we can. And so if I open these up, I've got birth rate, longevity, producer, physics. And I'm going to be honest with you. All of these do something a little different, and I don't always necessarily know what every sub-menu of every effect does. Sometimes you just got to play with it, slide the numbers over, slide the sliders. All right, so the first thing I do want to do is say, like, look, I don't want it to look like lines. I want this to look like something else. So instead of explosive, under animation, I want it to be fire. What's the difference? Is now fire attempts to go up as fire normally does. Okay, so under animation, I went from explosive, which is kind of exploding, to a fire effect to get it to go up. So you can already kind of see how that's going to work. All right, and I'm just going to kind of work my way down. You don't have to do exactly like mine. I'm just going to try to make it start to look like a little bit of fire. Okay, and so I'm going to move my way down. There's different things that you can do. A birth rate means is how heavy it is, how dense it is as it's playing. So if you increase the birth rate, see it's a little more, it's got more to it going on than if I were to drop this down. Longevity is how long this fire lasts. So if I shorten it, that fire dies out pretty quick. And I almost have like a fireball racing towards the ground. Okay. And then I've got position. So if I wanted this to be lower on the screen, I could kind of drag this around left to right, bring it down so I can see where it is, that kind of thing. If you wanted it over here, over there, you could move it. Just be careful. Move this one, not the center one. The center one moves the entire workspace. So you can move that if you can grab it. If not, you can just click and drag these numbers to move them around. Radius is how wide it goes on the X. So if you wanted a wall of fire versus the radius Y, which I would not mess with that one. Okay. I can see you messing with your radius X if you wanted to give you kind of a wall. It's up to you if you wanted it more like that. Or if you wanted a fireball, you can pick your number. Okay, moving down, we've done that. Velocity, gravity, and resistance. I'm not going to mess with those unless you really want to get detailed in there. Again, that goes into the physics, and I don't teach physics. I teach, how to navigate this, and if you want to mess with it, go for it. You can play and see what it does by just kind of clicking and dragging. See what you come up with. But I'm going to skip down to particle type. Now, I'm going to try to pick something else because obviously fire is not made of lines. So I'm going to try something else. So I've had success with bubbles, which I know they're not quite there yet. Or, forgive my pronunciation, the tetrahedrons. Okay? Now, no, they do not look like fire yet, but we will get there. Eventually, the hope is it will look like fire when we're done. So I'm going to leave that there. These are your colors if you really wanted another color to your fire. But for now, I like the yellowish to red. It gives me kind of a fire feel. And then again, there's your birth and your death rate. But as we add other ones, you may want to wait and come back to this after we've added the other effects on that we need. Okay, the next effect that we're going to put on is called a vector blur. Oops, I have to spell it right. Vector blur, CC vector blur. I'm going to drag and drop. It didn't do anything yet until I start to make some adjustments. And you can see that it starts to blur out my shapes, my tetrahedron shapes, okay, to be a little more not so sharp. All right. And this one, there's not a lot down here. So I just manipulated the amount. But I'm going to keep going with my next one. And my next one is called a fast blur. Okay, fast box blur I'm going to throw on there. And again, you're just going to have to kind of to see what it does. Now this is really blurry, so be careful. I know that fire is not super sharp, but it is not super crisp either in the shapes. But it helps to get rid of those little the edges of that tetrahedron. All right. Under the radial fast blur, I'm going to drop that down, and yeah, no, I don't need that one, so I'm going to go ahead and delete that out. Alright, let me move on to the next one. I'm going to get a directional blur, and I'm going to drag that on here, and if you'll notice, the directional blur will kind of aim your fire, it'll blur it in the direction that the fire's going. So right now the angle's going straight up and down, which is great. I can increase my blur length, and I've got a little more fire. You can start to see it looks a little bit more like fire. All right. The last one is giving that little curvy feel to your flames, and that is going to be a turbulent displace. Under distort, you can drag that over, and by default you can kind of see it gives you that curve. So you can definitely sit in there and go, that's a bit much, I don't want to do that much. I can sit there and try and give it a little more curvy. Now, just because I place these on does not mean I have the perfect fire effect. It's just a starting point. So what I would do if I was you is to go back up here to your beginning, your particle system, and start to play with it a little more. What does the bubbles look like? Okay, do you feel like maybe I can turn that into fire better? Are you good with the one that I recommended? And then you can start to make adjustments from there. Maybe you want the fire to go on a little more. Maybe you want the wall of fire. Okay, it looks a little more wall. Now it's a little spaced out, so maybe I want to increase the birth rate to be a little more filled up like that. Now you can start to see, and I'll rewind here and hit my space bar for play. You'll notice it's kind of slow on the render. It's trying to work itself out, figure out what you want to do. All right. I'm trying not to like freeze my computer up. I told you After Effects it's a big one. Okay, if you're ever getting some lag, right here it says full. That means it's trying to full render your resolution. So what you may want to do is drop that down to like a half or a third, because as you're working, we don't need it to be high res. We want it to look good, but if you keep it at something a little more manageable, After Effects will render a little better and faster for you. All right, so your goal is to, with these effects dropped on, with the manipulation. Give me something that looks like fire as best you can. And the last thing that I want you to do, and I'm not going to show it in the video, is I want you to actually apply this to something. So find an image, find a clip. We're not going to actually move the fire around down here with keyframes. I just want the fire burning. So for instance, if you wanted someone's hand sticking out and the fire on there, if you wanted it to look a little more like a fireball and someone holding it, you can bring that kind of back. Okay, so it's burning more in their hand like that, like boom. I want you to finish off your fire and put it on top of something so that the fire actually has some relevance to the image or the video clip that you picked. All right, so the last thing I want to do is, after you've created your fire, there's my little fireball. All right, I'm done for now, is exporting it out of here. All right, you've got it fixed, you've got it done. So what do? We come up here and we say File, Export, and we're going to add it to Render Queue. Okay, very simple. Everything is already set up for you except where it's going. All you got to do is change the output to somewhere you can find it. It's just going to be a simple AVI file, and an AVI file can be uploaded to YouTube and then onto your site, and then you would just hit save and hit render right here. And notice it's going to take mine about 10 seconds-ish to render out. And then I will have an AVI file that can go directly to YouTube. And for those of you that are not comfortable in YouTube or have not really had a channel, okay, you're just going to come over to YouTube. All right, and then once you log in or create an account, you're just going to click the upload video. All right, and it's going to ask you to drag your video over. Let me check my After Effects. It's almost done. You'll drag the AVI here, and then you'll go over to your website platform and upload and post the video there. Okay, so this video is just for reference, so you can kind of see back. If you have any questions, please let me know. But just to show you, I now have my fire video rendered out. So if I open up my AVI on my computer, it's thinking really hard right now. Here's my little fire video popping up here. Oops. And there's my fire. All right, and I will go through all the little details as well in the instructions and during the class time. So here's a video for reference. Good luck. Make your fire look like fire. Put it on top of something of relevance. Get it onto YouTube, export, get it onto YouTube, and I will see it on your website.